to start? When? Anytime? محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين. اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاع إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الموعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين فأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون فمن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون فما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون وسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الإخلاص والصلوات لأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات اللهم صل على محمد
नबी के मोहर नबूवत का वास्ता मासूम इमामों की इमामत का वास्ता बिनते नबी के चादर हिस्मत का वास्ता ज़ैनब वसीर गम की इबादत का वास्ता या یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ اے دکھیوں کے ناصر میرے معزز نما آباد، اے دکھیوں کے ناصر میرے معزز آقا، در پہ تیرے ہم آئے ہیں یا شاہ خراسان، ہم کیا کریں مجبور ہے حیران و پریشان، مشکل ہماری جو ہے تم کر دو اسے آسان۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ سن لیجیے اب جلد سے ہم سب کی خیر رباب، مجبور ہوں نادار ہوں کر دیجیے امداد، دل تھام کے کرتا ہوں سب روز تمہیں یاد، ضامن امام آپ ہے فریاد ہے فریاد۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ امداد طلب ہے ہمیں کیوں دیر کرے مولا، ہر چار طرف دیکھیے اندھیر ہے مولا، یہ کیا سبب ہے زندگی بھی ہے مولا، کہہ دو ایک بار کہ ہم خیر ہے مولا۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ ظلم و ستم کی کالی گھٹا دور ہے مولا، جو رنج و غم میں دل ہے وہ مقرور ہو مولا، اور قرض ادا ان کو جو مقروض ہو مولا، آفت سے مصیبت سے تم چھڑواؤ مولا۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ جو لا ولد ہے اولاد ان کو بھی اولاد عطا ہو، آمین۔ جو لا ولد ہے اولاد بھی ان کو اولاد عطا ہو، اور جن کی ہے اولاد وہ آباد سدا رہے، اولاد کو ایمان کی توفیق عطا دو، وہ شاد ہو ماں باپ کے دل شاد سدا ہو۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ جو ہے مریض ان کو شفا دیجیے آقا، آمین۔ جو ہے مریض ان کو شفا دیجیے آقا، لطف و کرم کی ان پہ نظر دیجیے آقا، رحمت سے ان کی جھولیاں بھر دیجیے آقا، سائل کو نہ محروم کبھی کیجیے آقا۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ ایک بار ہمیں تربت حضرت تو دکھاؤ، آمین۔ ایک بار ہمیں تربت حضرت تو دکھاؤ، کعبے کا پردہ چومو مدینے بھی دکھاؤ، ہے شوق شام جانے کا زوار بناؤ، مہمان کرو نجف کی میرا کام بناؤ۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ یا رب حق شاہ خراسان علی رضا، کر لو قبول آج ہماری تو یہ دعا۔ بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. ہر نفس ہر گھڑی میرے دل سے یہی آ رہی ہے صدا، یا امام رضا، 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 یا تیری عظمت پہ بھلا کیوں نہ دلالت بنتا، تیری عظمت پہ بھلا کیوں نہ دلالت بنتا، شیر قالین کا کس طرح نہ زندہ ہوتا، ہے حقیقت یہی تیری مرضی میں ہی ہے خدا کی رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، سب مل کے پڑھیں، میں رضا، یا غیر ممکن کو یوں ہوتے ہوئے دیکھا ممکن، غیر ممکن کو یوں ہوتے ہوئے دیکھا ممکن، جاگتی آنکھوں سے جنت میں گزارے کئی دن، اس کو کیا ہو یقین جس نے دیکھا نہیں کبھی روضہ تیرا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا. اب کی مشہد سے جو پلٹا ہوں تو میرے محسن، اب کی مشہد سے جو پلٹا ہوں تو میرے محسن، سانس لینا مجھے اچھا نہیں لگتا لیکن پھر بھی ہے یہ سکون، میں کہیں بھی رہوں دل وہیں ہے میرا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام. وقت کیسا یہ میرے ذہن میں آیا ہے ابھی، وقت کیسا یہ میرے ذہن میں آیا ہے ابھی، جیسے گہوار نے فطرس کو شفا بانٹی تھی ویسے ہی روز و شب بانٹتا ہے شفا تیرا صحن شفا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام، یا امام رضا. میری اس وقت تیرے در پہ نظر ہے مولا، میری اس وقت تیرے در پہ نظر ہے مولا، اور تجھے میری مصیبت کی خبر ہے مولا، دور افتاد کر میری امداد کر تو ہے مشکل خشا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام، یا امام رضا. التجا آپ سے کرتا ہوں امام ہشتم، التجا آپ سے کرتا ہوں امام ہشتم، ان کے صدقے میں جنہیں کہتے ہیں معصوم کم، جو پریشان ہے جلد کر دیجئے ان کی حاجت رواں، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، یا امام رضا، جیتے جی جان سے اپنی میں گزر جاؤں گا، جیتے جی جان سے اپنی میں گزر جاؤں گا، جلد مشہد نہ بلاؤ گے تو مر جاؤں گا، اے امام غریب تم ہو میرے طبیب، جلد کر دو دوا، یا امام رضا، 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 اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔ جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں، یہ بہن قید ہوئی، تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، آ گئی شام علم لٹ گئے اہل حرم، ریت پر جلتی ہوئی ہو گیا ٹھنڈا علم، پرسہ دینے کے لیے مجھ سے ملنے کے لیے آ گئے بابا علی، تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نہ آیا غازی، ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے، تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکی زاچ دے، یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا، مجھ پہ ہے تشنا لبی، تو نہ آیا غازی، دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا گر، ہے برہنا میرا سر، کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر، اے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو باخدا
تجھ سے دارست ہی بری تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ کتنی بے بس تھی بہن اے شہنشاہ وفا، نام لے لے کے میرا جب یہ ظالم نے کہا، ناز تھا جس پہ تجھے اب بلاؤ نہ اسے، اور میں روتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ قید خانے میں قضا جب سکینہ کو ملی، دیکھ کے کرتے کا کفن بچی دفنائی گئی، اصغری نام تیرا صورت ناد علی بس میں دہراتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے، تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکی زاچ دے، یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا، مجھ پہ ہے تشنہ لبی تو نہ آیا غازی، جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ آل عمران کہا اور زندان کہا، یہ بہن قید ہوئی تو نہ آیا غازی۔ بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The request to recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumeen of the sponsors of last night's Niyaz and Tabarruk and tonight's Tabarruk, Al-Fatiha. Apologies in the delay of tonight's program start time. Our Sheikh had a bit of trouble on the motorway, but alhamdulillah he's just made it, so we should start in a minute. We are honored to be hosting Brother Asghar Khimani for the lecture this evening. An optometrist by profession and based in South London, Brother Asghar has become well known around the country for delivering thought-provoking majalis, and we are delighted for him to have accepted our invitation for this evening. We recite one Surah Fatiha for Kul Marhumeen, and then we'll welcome the Sheikh to the member with 3 loud salawat. Al-Fatiha. Sallu ala Nabi.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الغوي الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي ذكره شرف للذاكرين وشكره فوز للشاكرين وطاعته نجاة للمطيعين وحمده عز للحامدين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وحبيب إله العالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا الرسول الأمجد المحمود الأحمد رحمة للعالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى تمام عدة المرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين سيدنا ومولانا وإمام زماننا الحجة المنتظر المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم وقرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected scholars, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I apologize for my lateness, and inshallah I won't keep you too long. We are here to commemorate the Shahadat anniversary of our holy Imam al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. The eighth holy Imam is an individual who many individuals have a very close connection to. You find when it comes to the Shia community, we have a very interesting connection with the holy Imam. After your salat, when you do ziyarat, you'll do the ziyarah of Rasulullah down to Imam al-Hussein. Then you'll do the ziyarah of Imam al-Ridha, and then you'll go to Imam al-Mahdi. So after our ziyarat, something happened that our elders had a ziyarah that was specific to the eighth holy Imam. And so you see, we have a special connection with the eighth holy Imam. There are a number of reasons some of the ulama suggest for this. On the first level, you find while all of the other Ahlul Bayt are buried next to each other or close by each other, we have 4 Imams in Baqi'. We have, for example, Imams in Iraq. Imam al-Ridha is different in that he is the only one in Tus or Mashhad. And that is why he is sometimes known as Gharib al-Ghuraba, the most lonely of the lonely ones, because he's far away from all the other Ahlul Bayt. And so that's why in our ziyarat we make a special ziyarat towards him, and even in the subcontinent countries, and even in this country, some people, when they're doing the ziyarat, they will turn to face Imam al-Ridha and do a specific ziyarat towards him. On a second level, you find some ulama say no. Historically, the Muslim community split quite a few times. You find after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the schisms became apparent very quickly. And as time went on, there were a number of schisms apparent in the Muslim community. This was true of the Shia and the other communities. I say the other communities because the names we know today did not come until much later. It was only the Shia name that was known very early on. But many schisms appeared. And after every Imam, there were certain schisms appearing, certain sects flowing out. For example, after Imam al-Qadhim, after Imam al-Sadiq, you had a number of schisms. You had, for example, those who would follow his older son, Ismail, who today are known as the Ismailis. And you all know there are branches of the Ismaili. There is the Nidari, the Dawoodi Bohra, the Aga Khani, etc., etc. You found there were some who were called Fatahiyya. They followed a different son of Imam al-Sadiq known as Abdullah al-Aftah. And then there were those who would follow Imam al-Kadhim. After Imam al-Kadhim, there were further differentiations in the community. You found there were those who were called Waqifites. After Imam al-Kadhim, they stopped. Waqif, in the Quran you have waqf, stop. The Waqifites were those who stopped after Imam al-Kadhim. They claimed that after Imam al-Kadhim, Imam al-Ridha can't be the Imam, because Imam al-Ridha's complexion was dark-skinned. And this is something for us to ponder on as well. But you found there were those who questioned the imamate of Imam al-Ridha, and they would question whether he was truly the Imam. And so they would stop after Imam al-Kadhim, and they would claim that the next Imam will come after Ghaiba. Later it transpired that these were the wukala of Imam al-Kadhim who were trying to pocket money in the meantime. And then there were those who followed Imam al-Ridha. Those who followed Imam al-Ridha usually would become 12ers, Ithna Ashari like we are today. Because those who followed Imam al-Ridha would end up normally being upon our path, the ulama say that we give a special mention towards Imam al-Ridha. Because by understanding that we are followers of Imam al-Ridha, it truly means that we are going to be a 12er. But if you don't have Imam al-Ridha, usually you don't end up as a 12er, you could be another sect. This is another opinion. Others disagree with this. They say, no, there were other sects that did come out afterwards. And they simply say that, Imam al-Ridha has a special gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, where I work, there are many Iranians that, the opposite of us. Iranians that are dissidents, they hate the regime, they wish that they could go back to their partying, etc. These individuals are speaking to one of them. He was working with me, and he said, I told him, I was trying to hint, I'm Shia, I wanted to see what he says. And he says, oh, we all love Imam al-Ridha. I said, what? He goes, yeah, whenever I go to Iran, we go from the airport, we go to Imam al-Ridha, we send salam, and then we go and we do what we want. I said, so you're religious? He goes, no. But he goes, we pay attention, we send salam to Imam al-Ridha. From a young age, our parents would take us, we'd seek blessings from the shrine, we'd send salam to Imam al-Ridha, and then we go away. You find Imam al-Ridha has this certain connection to humans beyond just the Shia community. Even the Sunni community in Iran pays special attention towards Imam al-Ridha. So this Imam is a truly special Imam. And so I wanted to concentrate on one of his attributes. Now there's one attribute of Imam al-Ridha that's really interesting before I go on to this other one. If I was to say which Imam is known as Alim al-Muhammad, which Imam is known as the scholar of al-Muhammad, most people would say either Imam al-Baqir or Imam al-Sadiq. These are the two Imams that established a culture of learning and university of learning. But the Alim of al-Muhammad was Imam al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. It might surprise you, how is Imam al-Ridha, the 8th holy Imam, the Alim of al-Muhammad, the scholar of al-Muhammad? Surely it should have been someone like Imam al-Sadiq. But what you found was historically, if you go to the books, Ayun Akhbar al-Ridha, Tuhaf al-Uqul, the history books on Imam al-Ridha, you will find Imam al-Ridha was the most open in debating other parties. Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq did. However, when you go to even the history of Imam al-Sadiq, you will find there are certain times he is telling some of his companions that there are certain things we don't teach to you openly, because the regime is against us. But they are giving us some freedom at this time. But Imam al-Ridha was made the heir apparent. And so his position was very different. He could openly debate those who came to him. He could openly show them the truth of Islam. And so his position was very different. He was in the limelight quite a lot. Imam al-Sadiq was teaching, but he wasn't in the limelight politically. Imam al-Ridha was in the limelight politically. So people, delegations who used to come wanted to talk to this individual. So when you go to the books of history, you find the most debates happen with Imam al-Ridha. You find, for example, there was a debate between an atheist and Imam al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Where he comes to the Imam and he says, explain to me where Allah is and how Allah is, how His existence is. The Imam answered him very beautifully. He said, Allah existed before there was anywhere, so you cannot ask where Allah is. And Allah existed before there was a concept of how, so you cannot ask how Allah's existence was. The atheist said, what do you mean? This does not sit well with me. Explain what you mean. He says, where comes from a concept of time and space. There has to be a time and there has to be space. Before there was any time and space, Allah was already existing. So you can't ask where He is when He was there beyond the concept of where. And the concept of how comes from a concept of limitation and understanding. I ask how something is because I can understand its limitations, where it came from, where it is going to. Allah was the one who created all of these hows. Therefore, you cannot ask how Allah is. He is the creator of how. The atheist says, O son of the prophets, I don't like this concept. The Imam says, why? He says, how can I worship a God I cannot understand? If I can't understand his existence, I can't worship him. The Imam replies in the most beautiful way. He says, the proof of his Godship is in the fact you cannot understand him. The proof of his Godship is in the fact that you cannot understand him. For the second you can understand him, that means he is no longer God. You know, atheists today, what's their problem? Their problem most of the time is they can't understand God. Or the way we explained God was wrong to them. They couldn't understand it. They said, because I cannot understand it up here, I cannot worship it. We say the very proof of his Godship is that you cannot understand him, because the second you understand him, what's the difference between you and him? He is a limited being like you are a limited being. Maybe he has more power than you, but he still is limited. The very proof of his Lordship is the fact that he is beyond our understanding. And that is why we go into sujood and submit to him. We submit wholeheartedly to a being who is beyond our understanding. This is what Imam al-Ridha used to teach. And you find as well, if you go to the history of the Ahlul Bayt, the hadith, you will find Imam al-Ridha was the one who would explain to us a lot of the biblical teachings. You find, for example, somebody would come to Imam al-Ridha, he would quote the Bible to them. And one thing he would always make clear to the Christians was that, do you recognize your Bible was written 100 plus years after Jesus? It was written by the disciples. What's the name of the Gospels? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You actually see Imam al-Ridha quotes Matthew. He gives the Arabic name, I think it's Matthew or something, but he quotes it Mata, Matthew. He quotes the Bible, he quotes these Gospels, but he says, don't you recognize these were disciples? They wrote it after Jesus. What's the difference between your Bible and our hadiths? Because your Bible was written after Jesus. It cannot be a holy canonical book. It wasn't written down at his time. It was written much later. And so you find Imam al-Ridha used to explain stuff about the Bible as well. The attribute of Imam al-Ridha I wanted to concentrate on today, and it's rather fitting that Allah willed for me to do this today, is the attribute of why he is known as al-Ridha. Al-Ridha means the one who is satisfied. Specifically, al-Radi bil-Qadari wal-Qada. The one who is satisfied with the decree and the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This attribute is a very vital attribute in our lives as well. And a vital attribute that was displayed by our holy Imam al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. You find the verses I recited from the Holy Quran. Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna. Oh, the soul who has gained tranquility. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. Return back to your Lord, radiya, satisfied with him. What does this satisfaction mean? It means being satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being satisfied with whatever Allah has in store for you. This is something which if we gain it, we will be able to live life with a much more beautiful flavor. And you find that this attribute is so important that there is a hadith of Imam al-Ridha in Tuhf al-Uqul, also quoted from Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Where they say that Iman has 4 arkan, 4 pillars. The 4 pillars of Iman are what? Number 1, tawakkul, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, tafweed, entrusting your affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3, taslim, submitting to that which Allah wants from us. And number 4, ar-ridha, being satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we find one of the pillars of Iman. You know, Iman is different to Islam. Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran, in the famous verse, Surah 49, verse 14, He says, وَقَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Arabs of the desert say, we believe. آمَنَّا, we have Iman. Allah says to Rasulullah, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. Tell them, you don't believe. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا وَلَمَّا يَدْخِلَ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. You simply say we submit. Iman has not yet entered into that heart. Which is why you find from the hadith of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. They say al-Islamu iqraran bila amal. Islam, just submitted to the religion, is an iqrar, it's a confession without action. Iman is iqrar with amal. Iman means that now you have done the confession and you act upon the confession as well. And so somebody with Iman practices the laws of Islam more diligently because he has a higher level of yaqeen and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the pillars of this Iman is ar-ridha, having satisfaction with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we all know our life is controlled by many different external factors. And so it is beneficial to understand what decree is, understand the benefit of being satisfied with this decree, and how we should interact with this concept so that we can live life in a more peaceful fashion. If I have your permission, please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To understand this concept of Ridha, we first have to understand the concept of decree. What is decree? What is destiny? You know, these are concepts that we throw around a lot in our majalis, but we need to understand what is it truly? What is decreed and what is not decreed? What does it mean when I say that this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And what different facets does this meet? You see, on the first level, in Islam, in Islamic history, the concept of free will and predestination is probably one of the most questioned things to the Imam and one of the most debated things in Islamic history. From the times of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you found theological schools are breaking out. You had the Ash'ari, the Maturidi, the Mu'tazili, the Jabari, the Qadari. You had so many different opinions on free will and predestination. And so you find as well, if you go to the books of history, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi, there are letters sent to them asking them about the concept of free will and predestination. And so you find it is something that grips the human mind. Am I truly free, or do I have the illusion of freedom? Is things predestined, or did things come just through science? Or is there any destiny at all? Or are we making this all up and things come from science? These questions have gripped human minds, Muslim and non-Muslim, from pre-eternity. Here, I'd like to quote to you to start this topic of decree. I'd like to quote to you from hadith from Mawla al-Muttaqeen, Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. The first tradition, Amir al-Mu'mineen, is narrated to have said, decree and destiny is one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is one of the amulets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is concealed through the veil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is concealed from the minds of the human being. Decree is one of the secrets of Allah. The second hadith, a man comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, tell me about predestination. Tell me about Jabr. Tell me about it. Tell me about Qadha and Qadr." Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "It is a deep ocean. Don't drown in it. It is a deep ocean. Do not drown in it." The man says, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, tell me about Qadha and Qadr." Second time, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "It is a difficult path. Don't trouble yourself with it." You think after twice, the man would accept it. A third time he says, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, tell me about Qadha and Qadr." He was one of us, we like to question a lot. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "Since you are insisting, then know that al-amr bayn al-amrayn, la jabr wa la tafweed." There is no full predestination, nor has Allah delegated to us free will. Rather, the matter is between the two matters. As you all famously know in the famous hadith of our Ahlul Bayt, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. Now, why do I start with these traditions? I've been saying we should understand decree, then I tell you the decree is the secret of Allah, and Amir al-Mu'mineen says, don't trouble yourself with it, don't drown in this ocean. It's to firstly outline that we are going into this topic to understand it so that we can benefit in our lives. But we have to understand our limitations in this topic. We have to understand our limitations in this topic. Many of the ulama, they have this disagreement with philosophy. They say, steer clear of philosophy. What they really mean is what we're going to say here. When it comes to predestination, there are times in predestination you cannot understand Allah's decree and destiny. But at the end of the day, these are the mindsets and the decisions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who are we as human beings to understand the mindset of Allah? This is why I gave that tradition of Imam al-Ridha. His Godship lies in the fact that He is beyond us, He is beyond our understanding. When it comes to decree and destiny, all we can understand is what the Quran says and what the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt say. Theology and philosophy, what's the difference? Theology means you start from a basic understanding. I've been taught that there is no God but Allah, Muhammad is His messenger. Now I understand everything with this foundation. That's theology. Philosophy starts with what? Philosophy says, I have no basic point, let me question everything. This is what the ulama say, be careful of. In philosophy, you can question predestination to no limit. Why did this happen? Why did Allah do it like this? Why did Allah create this? Why did Allah create anything? Why did He need anything? Did He need it? Did He not need it? If He didn't need it, why did He create it? Etc., etc., etc. When you get tied up in these questions, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, don't drown in that ocean. I know people who have become atheists because of the question of predestination. Why? Because they questioned it too much. There is a limit to our understanding here. And I start by stressing that because we're going to try and understand this topic to our understanding, but we should understand that this is not a topic to necessarily delve into in too much detail. It's a topic for one majlis, you go home, you benefit, and you carry on with your life. So inshallah, now that I've established that, let's move on. We've understood that predestination is a difficult topic. We're going to delve into it briefly using the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt, but we cannot overdelve in it. Now we move forward. We understand this concept of la jabr wa la tafweed. There is no full free will, nor is there full predestination. Now, a simple mindset, many of the theological schools at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen says there should be full predestination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ala kulli shay'in qadir. He is powerful over everything. Allah is the one who knows وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. Allah is the one who knows even when a leaf falls onto the ground, it does not fall except with the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how are you telling me that we have any free will? Rather, everything should be predestined. The Ahlul Bayt, as you know, gave many answers as to why we cannot have everything predestined. Number one, if everything is predestined, then what's all this concept of heaven and hell? If everything is predestined, then Allah has done everything. Why is He punishing me for that which He did? And why is He rewarding me for that which He did? Everything is predestined. The fact that there is a heaven and a hell means that everything cannot be predestined. Number two, beautifully proven, and I know people like stories, so we'll give you the hadith of Bahlul. Abu Hanifa one day was walking around telling everybody everything is predestined. Bahlul took a piece of clay and threw it at the head of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa got very angry. He dragged Bahlul to the court. The Hakim said, Abu Hanifa, what do you have to say? Abu Hanifa said, Oh Hakim, Bahlul threw a piece of clay at my head. I want you to give me retribution. Hakim said, Oh Bahlul, did you throw the piece of clay at his head? Bahlul said, No, I didn't. Hakim said, Then who did it? He said, Allah did it. Abu Hanifa teaches that everything is predestined by Allah. So when I took that clay and I threw it at the head of Abu Hanifa, it wasn't me, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that this is nonsense. We know that there has to be a justice system, a concept of justice. And this in itself is proof that everything cannot be predestined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, there is no tafweed. Now tafweed doesn't mean free will. Tafweed means delegation. So the Imam is teaching you free will is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But He has not given you the entirety of this gift. Tafweed means delegation. Allah has not fully delegated to us the freedom to do anything that we want. Right? And this is something that was pushed by the Mu'tazila at school, if I'm not mistaken. We cannot be fully free, and the Imams, when they were asked about this, they said, if we are fully free to do what we want, by that you are implying that Allah cannot stop me from doing what I want. That is questioning the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot question Allah's power. If Allah wants to stop me in my tracks today, can He? Of course He can. Bala. Allah is ala kulli shay'in qadir. Therefore we understand tafweed. There is no full tafweed. Free will is a gift from Allah. In fact, rather you understand it like this. Allah predestined in His system of the universe that there would be partial free will for the human being. Allah predestined that mankind will have a form of free will so that there is a concept of a test and a judgment. And so free will is part of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Free will is only there from the permission of Allah. Now you understand free will is an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you choose what to do in your life, that choice is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah could have made you all puppets and made you do what He wanted. He could have pulled you by strings. He could have got angels to be over you. Rather, Allah gave you freedom. And that freedom is the greatest gift in our lives. Just in passing, since I'm here, and since this story has come to my head, there's a famous psychologist known as Auschwitz, the Austrian psychologist or psychiatrist. He was locked up in the concentration camps by the Nazi Germany. He was in the concentration camps, locked away from his wife, away from his children, away from his mother. And you know, in the concentration camps, they shaved you bald, they made you all wear the same clothes. So you're in this depressing place, locked away. Now, Victor Auschwitz, being this psychiatrist, he couldn't help but question what was going on. And he said, he's written books, you can go and read them, he's very famous. He said in the concentration camps, there were two forms of people. There was one person who basically had given up on life. Life is finished, I'll just wait to die. And he said there were other people that for some reason had hope. They were thinking about what to do when they get out of the concentration camps. Victor Auschwitz got confused. He said, why are they so different? So he went to those people who had hope. And he asked them questions. He did questions on them. And he realized that there were a few beliefs that they had that meant that they still had hope. Number one, they had faith in a higher power. Because they had faith in a higher power, even though they were locked away by Nazi Germany, completely stripped away from their family members, completely isolated in this concentration camp, made to do what they want to do. Even then, because of their faith, they still had hope that they might come out and have to live a life again. Number two, he said that they had a feeling of freedom. What does this mean? He said, I asked them, they said that they felt free. He said, how do you feel free? You know, in a concentration camp, you can't do what you want. They're watching you 24/7. They make you do what they want. They said, we still have the freedom to think and disagree with them. That feeling of freedom gives us hope that one day, maybe we will have the freedom to do other things again. So the belief in freedom and free will is actually empowering for the human being. But it is a responsibility on the human being. You're free. Use that free will towards doing the good that Allah wanted you to do. Don't misuse your free will in doing evil against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have the concept of free will, and it's beautifully explained. The balance between predestination and free will, I think, can be beautifully explained by this one sort of scenario. There's a scenario of the school exam. Many of our children here will go to school exams, especially as you grow older. When you go to an exam, do you choose where you take the exam, or does the school choose? School chooses, you're going to take it in this hall, you're going to take it in this classroom. When you go to the exam, do you choose what topic you're going to do in that exam, or is the topic chosen for you? It's chosen for you. When you go into the exam hall, do you choose where you sit, or do they choose where you sit? In the more, as you get older, the exams become more professional. They choose where you sit. They say you will sit at this table, you will sit at this table, etc. When you go to do the exam paper, do you choose what questions come up, or do they choose the questions for you? They choose the questions for you. When you sat at the exam table, you open the test paper. Do they choose how you answer the questions, or do you choose how to answer the questions? You choose. In the same way, life is a test. Allah has decreed many factors for us. He has decreed which era we will be born in, which family we are born into, which society we are born into, which tests we go through in our life. Our free will is to see how we respond to the tests of life. So everything around us, the circumstances are predestined. Rather, we have the free will to see how we will answer those tests of life. Now we move a step forward. I hope the discussion is not becoming too heavy. As we move a step forward, we want to understand free will a bit more, predestination a bit more, decree a little bit more. Here, there is a beautiful hadith from Imam al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Now it's explaining the same concept, al-amr bayn al-amrayn. There is no full predestination nor free will, it's in between the two. But somebody comes to Imam al-Baqir and asks him to explain it, and he explains it differently. The Imam says to him, put one leg in the air. The companion puts one leg in the air. The Imam says, very well, put the other leg in the air. The man says, I can't. If I put both legs in the air, I'll fall down. The Imam says, this is the balance between free will and predestination. Some things are in your will, some things are decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when you look at this tradition, the flavor of it is different. Before when you think of decree, we think Allah has decreed where I was born, which era I was born in, etc., etc., etc. This hadith is different. This hadith, the predestination or the decree in this hadith is different. The decree in this hadith is referring to the scientific reality of the world. The reason you can't put both legs in the air is why? Because there is a system of this world called gravity, which means that you can't just levitate in air, you have to stay firmly on the ground. This is what we call scientific decree. Scientific decree. For example, biologically, we are wired a certain way. If, for example, somebody comes, he gets a knife and he cuts my hand, is my hand going to bleed? Yes, because Allah has created laws on this universe. This is biological decree. The atheists go a step further. They say there's psychological decree. Atheists, by the way, don't believe in free will. They believe everything is scientific. Therefore, everything is decreed. Scientifically decreed. Mother Nature decreed it for us. Biologically, we're determined because we have chemicals, we are chemically, organized, we have neurotransmitters. Depending on our biology, we will act. This is why they say certain inclinations, they're there from birth. Why do you question a person? They say we are biologically predetermined. Then they say we're psychologically predetermined. These are famous studies from Pavlov and B.F. Skinner, etc., where, for example, you get a dog, you put food in front of him, he pants. You get a dog, you put food in front of him, you then ring a bell, and he pants. You then get a dog, you take the food away, and you then ring the bell. Because of the association between the bell and the food, what does the dog do? It pants. Human beings are the same. We're psychologically predetermined. We're psychologically wired. In fact, no, he goes a step further. B.F. Skinner, he says we're psychologically predetermined, and it's complex to understand, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. From a young age, we have a concept of feedback, and we are acting on that feedback. When we do something and somebody gets happy with us, we get positive feedback, so we continue doing it. We do something and we feel good, we get positive feedback, so we continue doing it. We do something, our parents shout at us, negative feedback, we stop doing it. We do something, people look down upon us, our friends stop talking to us, we get negative feedback, we stop doing it. They say actually human beings are biologically and psychologically predetermined. We have a biological makeup that's impacting us, and we have a psychological makeup that's impacting us. The complexity is hard, but that doesn't mean it's not true according to the atheists. They say we are decreed. These two, there's some truth to them. That's why we discipline our children, right? When our children do something good, we say, I have a baby, so we clap for them, And when they do something bad, we tell them, no, it's bad. It's a bad thing to do. We psychologically help them. We try to give them feedback so that they stop doing certain things. Islamically, we still have free will. Why? Because above the matter of this body, there was a soul that is not determined by these scientific factors. Therefore, on a hot day when if it's, Maghrib is 9 o'clock, it's a hot day and iftar time is coming sooner, you might say, I'm going to get angry more easily. Islam says, no, you have a soul, control that temper. On a hot day when you're angry or when something is pushing at you, you will feel like getting angry more easily, and then later on you'll say, oh, it was hot and I was tired, I was hungry. You're not yourself when you're hungry. But Islam says, no, you have a soul, control that inclination. Control that. Decree here has a different flavor. Scientifically, there are certain things Allah has created for us in this system. We have to interact with this system, understand how much free will we have, and understand what is decreed for us. Then we can understand how best to use our free will. Understand this point here. And this point affects us in different ways. Some people are born with an illness. They're born with an illness. No fault of their own. They didn't choose to have an illness. They were born with it. Here, did Allah give that person the illness? It's a very hard question. Because if you say yes, then all you can say is a test from Allah. Here the ulama say, wait, answer it differently. That illness came from a scientific decree, a scientific reality. Two dominant genes came together, or two recessive genes came together, they got this illness. So the reason they have this illness is because of the laws of the world, the laws of science. Allah chose which soul goes into which body. So Allah chose this test for that person. But Allah didn't give that person the illness. Can you see the difference? On one level, I can say Allah chose you to have autism. So He tweaked your chromosomes, He tweaked you, He gave you mutations and said, you autism, you Down syndrome, you this. But that doesn't make sense. So why does Allah do that? Rather, illnesses are a scientific decree. When we understand this, now we understand we have to be the full researchers of the scientific decree. That is why the students or the pioneers of science are the students of Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. They wanted to understand the system of this world, how it works, so that they can bring things back towards the way Allah wanted them to be. Cancer, why is it caused? There's a scientific reason. Allah created the laws. We misused the laws and created all of these illnesses. Allah created the laws. We misuse these laws. But Allah chooses which soul goes into which body. And so He knows which soul can take which test. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. And so if there are individuals that you know that are born with certain illnesses, this is the way to understand these things. Understand them from the fact that scientifically something has gone wrong here. But Allah knows we are the people to take on this test. This gives you hope, this gives you strength and power. If you're going through a difficult time, and you for example, if a child with an illness is born in a family, it's difficult for the family. What keeps them going? That faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen them for this test and has felt they are worthy of not just taking this test, they are worthy of passing this test and helping others pass this test as well. And so when we understand decree like this, now decree has a completely different flavor. Now the scientific laws of this universe are part of the decree of Allah. We have to work to understand these decrees. And we have to work to not just understand these decrees, but understand how to try and rectify these things. This is what Allah wanted us to do. We say about the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Ajjal Allah ta'ala farajuh al-Sharif. يَمْلَعُ اللَّهُ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا. He is going to fill the world with equity and justice. When we think of equity and justice, we only think of things like, court law. There's going to be no people murdering, etc. This is one aspect. In science, the Imam is going to teach us where we're going wrong and how to bring it back towards equilibrium, how to get rid of illnesses, how to cure cancers. The Imam wants a community like this that understands the world and understands how to bring it back towards the law that Allah decreed for it to happen. Because of our misuse, the world is the way it is today. 30, 40-year-olds, cancer is on the rise because of the way we are doing it. Mental health issues are on the rise from a young age. Why? Because of something we're doing. It's something human beings are doing. It's not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah made the laws. We are messing around with these laws. So this is the first aspect of decree, scientific decree. The second aspect of decree, as we all know, is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deciding the circumstances of our life. Deciding how much rizq we are going to have. Deciding what sort of test we're going to go through in life. Deciding which community we are born into. Here, being satisfied with the decree of Allah means what? Being satisfied with all of these factors. Number one, being satisfied with what era you're born into and which family you're born into. There are some people that wish they were born into a richer family. Or some people that wish they were born into a different community. Or some people that wish that they were born into a different society. No, be thankful you are born into the family you were born into. Be satisfied, ridha, not thankful, ridha, satisfied. Understand that Allah knows that which was best for you, and He chose the best possible circumstances for you in your life. There are many people out there, they come from a family which is struggling. Sometimes they'll see people who are more wealthy than them. Their family themselves are struggling, their friends have big houses. Their friends, drive big cars. Well, they came from a family or a livelihood which was less. Here they start to struggle. They start to say, why couldn't I be born into a rich family? Or why can't I get rich as well? Be satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're satisfied with the decree of Allah on the first level, you have to be satisfied with the decree of Allah. Because when you're not, it gives rise to moral degradation. For example, we find in the dua of Imam al-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Dua number 35 of Sahifat al-Sajjadiyah, the dua about being satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Oh Allah, send blessings on Muhammad and al Muhammad. وَلَا تَفْتَنِّي بِمَا أَعْطَيْتَهُمْ. Do not test me with that which you have given to other people. وَلَا تَفْتِنَهُمْ بِمَا مَنَعْتَنِي. And do not test other people with that which you have given to me. فَأَحْسُدَ خَلْقَكَ وَأَغْمِتَ حُكْمَكَ. Because then I would start to have jealousy of other individuals. And then I would start to hate your decrees and your decisions. Two moral diseases that come out of not being satisfied with the decree of Allah. When you're not satisfied with the amount of rizq you have in your life, or you're not satisfied with the circumstances Allah has given to you in your life, the two things it gives rise to is number one, jealousy. And as you know, jealousy burns at the face of a believer like fire burns wood, according to the famous hadith. A jealous individual cannot live in peace. He cannot sleep in peace. He cannot interact with people in peace. He is always edgy because he always seems to want what other people have. When you're satisfied with that which you have, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, this is the greatest ghina, this is the greatest wealth, because then you can live in peace. But on the second level, the Imam says, when you're not satisfied with the decree of Allah, what you're actually doing is you're not just angry at your situation, you're angry or you're hating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who chose for you this situation? Who chose for you this circumstance? Allah. When you are not happy with your circumstances, this shows a weakness in your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We go back to the start. One of the arkan of Iman is al-Ridha. If you do not have Ridha in your circumstances in life, it's not that you're not happy with your life, you're not happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's an issue with your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a huge moral problem, something that will stop you from progressing in life and progressing towards Jannah, inshaAllah. And so we have to be satisfied with our lot in life, satisfied with the circumstances we come through. That's the first level. Second level, certain circumstances cause us to become very agitated and annoyed. For example, you're on a journey and you break down on the motorway. All of you have gone through it before. You break down on the motorway, there's an accident in front of you and the traffic is not moving. You're stuck for 3, 4, or 5 hours. You can't get to where you want. At this time in life, this is a test. Allah has decreed for you this circumstance. Did you have control over it? No. When you recognize this, there's 2 ways to respond to this situation. One is to be angry at the situation and get agitated, complain. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening? What can I do? I can't get to my destination. This, etc., etc. The other way is to respond in what way? With a smile. I can't control the situation. Let's make the best out of this situation. Let's see, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saving me from something which was worse for me. You know, sometimes there's an accident on the motorway and you're broken for 3, 4 hours. And you get agitated and angry and you think, why couldn't I get home in time? Maybe if you go home in time, something bad would have happened to you. Sometimes Allah protects you in those ways. But on the second level, maybe Allah wanted to teach you a certain lesson with those circumstances. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in certain situations to teach you a valuable life lesson. And had you not gone through that circumstance, you would have never understood that lesson in life. Sometimes you'll think back to times in life, mistakes that you've made, or not mistakes that you've made, things that happen that stop you from being able to progress. You know, you are about to get a promotion in a company and something happened and stopped you in your tracks. And you're like, why? Ya Allah, why? I did everything right, I did dua, I tried hard, etc., etc. Ya Allah, why? Maybe Allah wanted to teach you a life lesson you could never have learnt otherwise. And so, when it comes to the circumstances in your life, be satisfied with Allah's decree. Have ridha. You know, the ulama here, they say there's 2 concepts. You can have sabr, or you can have ridha. Sabr means to persevere. I think I gave a lecture here some time ago about sabr and perseverance. Not patience, but perseverance. You can persevere. But persevering means to persevere while you find it very difficult. Sabr means, for example, you have an accident on the motorway, you're broken down, your baby's crying, and you're thinking what to do. And you start to become agitated. But rather than lashing out, getting angry, getting annoyed, you swallow it and you start to do some dhikr. That's sabr, persevering, fighting that self. Ridha is that same situation, but you face it with a smile on your face. Same situation, same circumstance, same difficulty. But rather than persevering and fighting the self is satisfied. Out of my control. Must be Allah's lesson. Let's see what life has to teach us today. That is ridha. Ridha biqada'illah. You know, to explain this ridha, let me bring you to, we've just come out of Muharram Safar. Let me bring you back towards Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Two situations where Imam al-Husayn teaches us ridha biqada'illah and teaches us this concept of being satisfied with the decree of Allah. The first one, without going into masa'ib, Imam al-Husayn is standing on the hot plains of Ashura, of Karbala, and he's holding his 6-month-old baby. Let's take it with the context of this lecture. He's had a whole day, it's a hot day, he's on the desert sands of Karbala. He's 57 years old, so he's not young. He's going back and forth multiple times carrying dead bodies. And he's holding his 6-month-old baby who is completely thirsty. Biologically, where should this individual's mind be? Look at Imam al-Hussein and how he's able to control himself. Where should his mind be? If you take the atheist paradigm of psychological and biological decree, Imam al-Hussein as a body at that time is probably dead tired. Psychologically at that time is probably completely weakened. They shoot a 3-pronged arrow into the neck of that baby. But yet when he goes back, what does he say? He walks back and forth 7 times saying, رِضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ. Unbelievable. His 6-month-old baby has just been killed in his arms. But yet, he was able to say, I am satisfied with the decree of Allah. In another narration he says, it is reported, he said at this time, هَوَّنَ عَلَيَّ مَا نَزَلَ بِي أَنَّهُ بِعَيْنِ اللَّهِ. That which makes this easier for me is to know that Allah is watching. In our trials, our hard times, if we know that Allah is watching, we say, Ya Allah, why me? Ya Allah, why did you do this to me? Imam al-Hussein says, the fact that Allah is watching gives me strength at this time. Because if Allah is watching, I know that there must be some khair in what is happening here. The second instance, Imam al-Hussein is leaving Mecca early to go towards Kufa. He on the way meets the famous poet named Farazdaq, who is taking his elderly mother towards Hajj. He meets Farazdaq. They have a conversation. He says, oh Farazdaq, tell me about the people of Kufa. Farazdaq says, Imam, I don't think you should go there. Imam says, why? He says, their hearts are with you, but their swords are against you. Even that line could have a whole lecture on it. Their hearts are with you, but their swords are against you. The Imam says, very well. He's about to proceed on his journey, and Farazdaq says, oh Imam, I fear for you on this journey. Don't go on this journey. Don't go to Kufa. Go somewhere else. The Imam says, Allah has made His will and His decree clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made over thousands of people write letters to Imam al-Hussein in Kufa. At that time, what does he have to do? If you have 2,000 letters from one place, you have to answer the call. You can't say no. Imam al-Hussein says, Allah has made His will and decree clear. I'm going towards Kufa. If the decree of Allah is not in our favor, if the decree of Allah is in our favor, we will thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the decree of Allah is not in our favor, meaning we go to Kufa and they turn against me, then as for the one who has a sincere niyyah and he does good, then he never loses anything in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In circumstances in life which are difficult, sometimes we fear, losing something. We fear that something bad is going to happen. As long as we are trying our best and our intentions are sincere, we are never going to lose anything in our life. The decree of Allah might go against you. Things might seem difficult for you. Sometimes in your families, you'll have troubles and trials and situations. And you'll be wondering how to get out of those situations. You'll be trying your best. You'll get out of one trial, another trial will come. You'll sort one mess out, another mess will appear. You'll be like, what do I do? Imam al-Hussein teaches you, all you have to do is do that which is right in the eyes of Allah. And then as for this person, he will never lose anything in the eyes of Allah. Sometimes in these situations in life, these difficult situations, we cave in. Let's say, for example, you're unemployed, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Things are difficult. A job interview comes. There's alcohol on the table. Imam al-Ridha teaches us, never sit at a table where alcohol is served. Hence it is haram. At these sorts of situations, sometimes we cave in. We're like, I've come to this interview, it's all promising, but there's alcohol at the table. What do I do? The Imam says, follow what Allah wants you to do. Even if it is against your favor in the eyes of Allah, you've lost nothing. In the eyes of Allah, you've lost nothing. Trust me, even if you lose that job, another better job will come after it. All you have to do is do that which was best in the eyes of Allah. At this time, you go for that interview, you've been unemployed for a long time, you go to that interview, you sit on that table and you recognize they're bringing alcohol to the table. In your mind, there's so many things going through your head. I haven't had a job for so long, this one seems promising, they want to give me the job, but there's haram at the table. There's haram at the table. You might in your mind say, Ya Allah, why? I finally got a job that looked promising and this person brought alcohol to the table. Why couldn't you make that person drink later? These are Allah's signs to you. This is why Allah puts you in these situations, to test how much belief and yaqeen do you have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're going through the difficulties of life, these random situations in life, remember to have ridha of Allah. And if you want a dua, there is no better dua than the end section of dua Abi Hamza al-Thumali of Imam Sayyid al-Sajidin, Zayn al-Abidin, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. The Imam, dua Abi Hamza is a mesmeric dua, iconic dua. At the end of this dua, there's one paragraph, like the conclusion. And the Imam says this, and it's such a beautiful sequence. The Imam says, Allahumma habli imanan tubashiru bihi qalbi. Oh Allah, gift me iman that completely encapsulates my heart. Wa yaqinan sadiqan, and a true and certain yaqeen. Hatta, to the extent, a'lama annahu la yusibani illa ma katabta li. A true yaqeen until I recognize that nothing touches me except that which you had willed for me. وَرَضِّنِي بِمَا قَسَمْتَ لِي, and make me satisfied with the lots and rizq you have given to me in my life. Ya arhamar rahim, oh the one who is the most merciful of the merciful. Beautiful dua of Imam al-Sajjad. Give me yaqeen, Ya Allah, that all the circumstances that I don't have control over in my life, everything that comes to me. I say, decree is that which you don't have control over. Just quickly, sometimes in your life, you'll have circumstances that are very unfavorable, but you've caused them. You've lied once, then to hide that lie, you've lied again, then to hide that lie, you've lied again, and you're stuck in the circle of lying. And you think, why? Well, that's your fault. That's not. The decree is still there because Allah decreed if you're going to do that, you're going to suffer. But that's not Allah decreeing something for you. Decree is when you had no control over it and it came to you. And in that situation, you have to use your free will to answer that situation in the best way possible. Which is why Imam al-Husayn's statement is so beautiful. As for the one who has a sincere niyyah and does good deeds, in the eyes of Allah, he will never lose anything, no matter how unfavorable life becomes. And so when we understand this concept of the decree of Allah and being satisfied with Allah's decree, when you are able to do this, the Imams say, you will never have grief in your life. You will never have huzn in your life. You will never have worry in your life or anxiety. As in, you'll get the standard anxiety of a human being, the anxiety that spurs you into action. That's good. But you won't get anxious in a way that holds you back. Or you won't have grief in a way that affects your mental well-being. Because you have that yaqeen in the decree of Allah. That satisfaction with the decree of Allah. And that allows you to keep going even in the most difficult of circumstances. Imam al-Ridha, he was known as al-Radhi bil-Qadari wal-Qadha. Imam al-Ridha, he was known as Gharib al-Khuraba because he was very lonely in his life. Especially when Imam al-Ridha, many people know, I hope you know, Imam al-Jawad was born after many years in his life. Imam al-Jawad was born when he was about 40 or 50. It was his only son. And some people questioned Imam al-Jawad's mother as well because of how dark complexioned he was. Imam al-Ridha obviously was already dark because his mother and grandmother were both from North Africa. And his son was even darker, and people questioned him because of how dark he was. But Imam al-Ridha, imagine at the age of 40 or 50, you have your first son. Then all of a sudden, Ma'mun makes you heir apparent and parades you from city to city. It kind of shows off, this is my heir apparent. Imam al-Ridha was taken from Medina towards Iraq, towards Iran, taken towards Marif, Khurasan, Mashhad, Tus. Loneliness is not when there's no one around you. Loneliness is a state of mind, when you have no one you know around you. Imam al-Ridha was lonely for this reason. He was surrounded by Ma'mun and his people. He was traveling with them day and night, being taken with them everywhere, in lands where there was none of his family members. He was Gharib al-Khuraba. But he was known as Ar-Radhi bil-Qadari wal-Qadha. Never did he complain to Allah about his situation. Never did he become agitated about his situation. Never did he become upset about his situation. And that is why he was known as Ali Ar-Ridha, Ar-Radhi bil-Qadari wal-Qadha. Until the time came when Ma'mun realized that Imam al-Ridha's influence on the people was too strong. And it was not something he could use to his favor. And now he started to plot on how to get rid of this issue in his life. And the narrations say, in Tus, in Mashhad, Ma'mun decided that he needed to get rid of Imam al-Ridha. And so he told his people to bring him some pomegranates and some grapes. And he injected poison into these grapes. The next morning he would go to Imam al-Ridha and he would say, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I have never tasted grapes better than these grapes. Please try one. Imam al-Ridha says, Oh Ma'mun, I'm sure there are nice grapes in your garden as well. Ma'mun says, No, these grapes are the best of grapes. You have to taste these grapes. According to the narrations, Imam al-Ridha, he reluctantly takes one of these grapes. He puts it into his mouth and immediately he feels a weakness from here. And he says, Oh Ma'mun, what you have decided to do is now going to come to fruition. The narrations say that night itself, Imam al-Ridha goes home and he is with a companion named Abi Salt al-Hawawi. He says, Oh Abi Salt, he has done what he has done and now my situation is as you see. Abi Salt says, Oh Imam, why are you so pale? Why do you look so weak? Why is it that you are struggling to stand? And why is it that you cannot stand up? Imam al-Ridha says, Oh Abi Salt, Ma'mun has given me the poisoned grapes. Now I can feel the poison ripping at the organs of my body. I am becoming extremely weak. The narrations say Imam al-Ridha was in this situation for one entire night where he was moving from side to side, feeling the effects of poison onto his body until the narrations say he passes away the next day. The narrations say Ma'mun hid the body of Imam al-Ridha for an entire day. He did not allow people to know what had happened because he feared how people would respond to the fact that this has happened and he may have done something. So he hides the death for one night and one day until the family come and they ask, Where is Imam al-Ridha? And they find that he is dead and his body is lying in the courtyard of his house. Not even on the bed of his house, in the courtyard of a land his body lied. But oh Imam al-Ridha, while you were a lonely stranger in Tus, while your body lied without kafan and without being buried for one day, I ask you to come towards Karbala. You are a stranger in the land of Tus. Come and see Imam al-Hussein as a stranger in the land of Karbala, where he stands there and he calls out, Ala hal min nasirin yansuruna, ala hal min dabbin yadubbuna, ala hal min mughithin yughithuna. Is there anyone to help us? Is there anyone to support us? Oh Imam al-Ridha, your body lied there without a ghusl and a kafan for one day. But Imam al-Hussein's body lied on the plains of Karbala for 3 days. And how did it lie there? Imam al-Ridha had a very soft spot for Imam al-Hussein. He would say, Ibn al-Shabib, if you are going to cry over anything, then cry over my grandfather Hussein. For surely he was slaughtered in a way worse than animals. How was he slaughtered worse than animals? The narrations say Imam al-Sajjad one day was going past a butcher. He would say, Oh butcher, when you're about to slaughter this animal, can I ask you some questions? He says, Oh Ibn Rasulullah, go ahead. He says, Oh butcher, before slaughtering this animal, did you give it some water? He says, Your grandfather taught us as a sunnah that before we slaughter an animal, we should feed it some water. He looks towards Karbala and says, Oh my father, they slaughtered you while you were thirsty. He said, Oh butcher, can I ask you another question? Are you slaughtering this animal in front of its family members? The butcher said, No, Ya ibn Rasulullah, your grandfather taught us never to butcher an animal in front of its family members because those other animals will find it difficult. He looks towards Karbala and he says, Oh my father, they slaughtered you in front of your family members while Zainab was looking on. He then says, Oh butcher, can I ask you one last question? He says, when you're butchering this animal, are you using a sharp knife or a blunt knife? He says, I'm using a sharp knife. Your grandfather taught us it makes the death easier upon the animal. He looks towards Karbala and says, Oh my father Hussein, they used a blunt knife to behead you and to make your death more slow and more difficult for you. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimeen. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين يا حسين.
घबराई है ज़ैनब आया है मदीना घबराई है ज़ैनब आया है मदीना घबराई है ज़ैनब ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا 1 سال گزارا ہے زندان ستم میں دن باقی گزارے گی زینب اسی غم میں مقتل میں ہے اصغر زندہ میں سکینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ اے اہل مدینہ تو خاموش ہے رہنا زینب سے خدا را تو ایک لفظ نہ کہنا جو سانس بچی ہے کھو دے گی حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے یہ سوچ کے روتی ہے بیمار ہے سغرا ہر فرض کے بارے میں اب پوچھے گی دخیا ایسا نہ ہو سن کر مر جائے حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ اہل مدینہ تو خاموش ہے رہنا زینب سے خدا را تو ایک لفظ نہ کہنا جو سانس بچی ہے کھو دے گی حزینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ گھبرائی ہے زینب آیا ہے مدینہ آیا ہے مدینہ صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد
توجہ زیارت السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا حبیب اللہ السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین علی بن ابی طالب السلام علیک یا فاطمة الزہراء سیدتی نساء العالمین السلام علیک یا خدیجة الکبریٰ ام المؤمنین السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي السلام عليك يا ابن الحسن صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين